You see your phone light up. It's not even a spam number. It's someone you actually know. Maybe a friend, maybe your boss, maybe your own mother. And yet, your entire body reacts like you've just been selected for the Hunger Games. Your brain instantly starts negotiating. Maybe if I wait long enough, they'll text instead. You stare at the screen while the ringtone keeps going, almost offended that this person expects immediate access to your soul at 4:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Then it stops. Relief. Pure relief. And the weird part is, 5 seconds later, you feel guilty for feeling relieved. If you relate to this, you're definitely not alone. In fact, there's a growing number of people who would rather write a 5-paragraph text message, send 3 voice notes, or physically travel across town before answering an unexpected phone call, which raises an interesting question. Why? Why can some people casually pick up a phone and talk for an hour like they were born in a customer service headset, while others experience a small existential crisis the second their ringtone goes off? At first glance, people assume it's simple. Oh, they're antisocial, they're shy, they're awkward. But psychology tells a much deeper story than that. Because hating phone calls usually isn't about hating people. It's about what phone calls psychologically represent. Think about it for a second. A text message gives your brain space. You can pause, think, edit yourself. You can respond in 2 seconds or 20 minutes. It's controlled communication. It feels safe. A phone call is the opposite. It's immediate, unpredictable, emotionally demanding. Your brain has no draft button. And for certain personalities, that changes everything. There's actually a psychological concept called communication apprehension, which describes the anxiety people feel around real-time interaction. But what's fascinating is that many people who hate phone calls are perfectly articulate in person. Some are even charismatic, funny, deep thinkers, great writers. So the issue isn't necessarily social skill. It's processing speed under emotional exposure. Because during a phone call, your brain is doing 1,000 tiny calculations every second. You're interpreting tone, timing, pauses, emotional meaning, expectations, and your own responses simultaneously. It's like emotional ping pong with no pause menu. For highly reflective people, that can feel exhausting, especially because humans evolved to rely heavily on facial expressions during communication. Your brain naturally wants visual cues, eye contact, body language, tiny signals that help predict emotion and intention. Phone calls remove all of that. So now your brain is stuck in this weird psychological limbo where someone's voice is directly in your ear, but half the information is missing. It's like trying to drive through fog. And your mind compensates by overanalyzing everything. Wait, did they sound annoyed there? Was that pause weird? Do I sound awkward? Am I supposed to keep talking now? Meanwhile, the other person is probably just looking for their car keys. This is why phone anxiety is often strongest in people who are naturally self-aware or emotionally sensitive. Their brains are already tuned in to subtle emotional signals. So when communication becomes ambiguous, the mind fills in the blanks, usually with stress. And modern life has made this even more intense. Because texting fundamentally changed the way humans socialize. For most of history, communication happened live and in real time. There was no typing, bubble, no leaving someone on read. No carefully crafting the perfect response while lying in bed eating cereal at midnight. Conversation was immediate. Now, communication is curated. People spend hours editing captions that look effortless. They rewrite simple messages 3 times before sending them. Entire friendships happen through memes and reaction images. So when the phone rings unexpectedly, it feels almost invasive. Not because the person is bad, but because the brain has become accustomed to controlled interaction. In a strange way, phone calls bypass the performance layer we've built online. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because calls reveal you in real time. Your hesitation, your nervous laugh, your silence, your uncertainty. No filter, no editing. Just you. And honestly, that vulnerability is terrifying for a lot of people. Especially those who grew up in environments where they felt constantly judged, interrupted, or emotionally misunderstood. Psychologists often talk about something called hypervigilance. It's when the brain becomes overly alert to social or emotional danger. Usually because, at some point, unpredictability became associated with stress. For some people, phone calls trigger exactly that feeling. You don't know what the person wants. You don't know how long the conversation will last. You don't know if it's good news, bad news, confrontation, obligation, or emotional labor disguised as just a quick call. And isn't it funny how quick call almost never means quick call? Somehow 20 seconds turns into 45 minutes, and suddenly you know about someone's cousin's business idea and their neighbor's divorce. Your brain knows this possibility exists. So the ringtone itself becomes psychologically loaded, like a tiny digital jump scare. But here's the part people rarely talk about. Many people who hate phone calls are actually deeply thoughtful communicators. They care about saying the right thing. They care about emotional nuance. They care about being understood clearly. That's why they often prefer texting. Writing gives them time to organize emotion into language. Phone calls remove that structure. Imagine asking a perfectionist painter to suddenly freestyle graffiti on a moving train. That's how spontaneous verbal communication feels to some minds. Messy, fast, exposed. And interestingly, introversion plays a role too, but not in the simplistic way people think. Introverts don't necessarily hate people. Research suggests many introverts simply process stimulation more deeply. Their nervous systems react more intensely to external input. A phone call is pure, uninterrupted input. Noise, emotion, expectation, attention. No wonder some people stare at their ringing phone like it's an incoming meteor. But there's another layer beneath all of this that's surprisingly emotional. Control. Texting gives you control over pace, distance, timing, energy. Phone calls demand presence. Right now. And if someone already feels emotionally overwhelmed by work, social pressure, family expectations, or life in general, even a simple conversation can feel like one more thing reaching into their mental space. That's why some people ignore calls even from people they love deeply. Not because they don't care, but because their social battery feels like it's running on 2%. And modern culture often misunderstands this completely. People say things like, "It takes 2 seconds to answer." But psychologically, it doesn't feel like 2 seconds. It feels like opening a door your brain wasn't prepared to open, especially for people who spend most of their lives mentally overstimulated. And honestly, we live in one of the most overstimulating periods in human history. Notifications, emails, videos, news, messages, algorithms competing for attention every second of the day. The average brain barely gets silence anymore. So when a phone call arrives unexpectedly, it can feel less like communication and more like interruption. Like someone suddenly walking into your room without knocking. And yet, despite all this, people who hate phone calls often crave connection deeply. That's the irony. Many of them are emotionally intelligent, observant, loyal, thoughtful listeners. They just connect differently. They prefer intentional interaction over spontaneous demand. They'd rather have one meaningful conversation than 10 random check-ins. And sometimes, if we're honest, they're reacting against the performative nature of modern communication itself. Because phone culture often rewards instant availability, immediate responses, constant accessibility. But psychologically, humans were never designed to be reachable every waking moment of their lives. Your nervous system needs recovery. Your mind needs quiet. Your identity needs space from other people's expectations. And maybe people who avoid phone calls are unconsciously protecting that space. Of course, avoidance can become unhealthy too. If anxiety completely controls communication, it can slowly shrink your world. Relationships suffer, opportunities disappear, isolation grows. The goal isn't to fear interaction forever. It's to understand why your brain reacts this way in the first place. Because self-awareness changes everything. Once you realize your dislike of phone calls isn't laziness or rudeness, but a mixture of overstimulation, vulnerability, emotional processing, and modern communication habits, something shifts internally. You stop attacking yourself for it. And weirdly enough, that self-understanding often reduces the anxiety itself. Because shame amplifies avoidance. But curiosity softens it. Instead of thinking, "Why am I like this?" your brain starts asking, "What does this reaction say about how I process the world?" That's a much more compassionate question. And maybe this whole phenomenon says something bigger about our generation too. Humans have never been more connected, yet so many people feel emotionally exhausted by communication itself. Maybe the issue isn't that people hate talking. Maybe people are tired of feeling constantly reachable. There's a difference. And perhaps that's why so many people light up when communication feels safe, slow, and intentional instead of demanding. A thoughtful text, a late-night voice note, a conversation where there's no pressure to perform. Because deep down, most people still want connection. They just don't want emotional ambushes disguised as ringtones. So the next time your phone rings and your soul temporarily leaves your body, remember this. Your reaction isn't random. Your brain is trying to manage stimulation, uncertainty, vulnerability, and energy all at once. And understanding that doesn't mean you have to avoid every call forever. It just means you understand yourself a little better now, which is really what psychology is all about. Not judging human behavior, but recognizing the hidden emotional logic behind it. And honestly, if you ignored a phone call while watching this video, you might be exactly the kind of person this was made for. So I'm curious. When your phone rings unexpectedly, what's the very first thought that enters your mind? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring the strange little patterns hidden inside human behavior, you already know what to do.